Hi, and welcome to this video of my YouTube channel, this talk video. And of course, as usual, I'm Hirsch Saha reporting from Auckland, New Zealand. Today it is Friday afternoon. What a wonderful heavenly time. As corny as that sounds. But it is Friday afternoon, on the 12th of June 2026. And yes, you read that title right, my first one night stand. I actually had someone write into me before saying that Hirsch, you make these videos and they're quite interesting and sometimes a bit too formal and all that, even the way you talk. Some people might think you're AI in the way you talk. I mean, well, I'll take that as a compliment, but they were saying, you should really do something a bit more personal, or something a bit more you, something that sort of exposes you a bit more for who you are, or makes people, sort of see the individual you are inside. I'm thinking, I guess that's an interesting idea, but also I want to, remain sort of true to the character of the channel. You don't want to do anything that is too random or too out of it or something that doesn't fit in. And like I've said in the basic description, that I know my videos might seem a bit random in their topics, but I've done that on purpose so I can. What I'm trying to do is sort of make something for everyone, and also to make it so that you don't have to watch all the videos from the very beginning to understand them. Like TV series. The videos that I've made are seriously in no particular order. They're simply presented in the order that I made them. So do keep that in mind. If you do want to start with a particular video, I suggest Talk Video 100 because it's a bit of an introductory video to my whole YouTube channel, and I'm basically saying what I've just said now and a bit more. But yeah, so someone was saying, try to say something a bit personal, and well, I think I've done that before. I had those 3 videos earlier about comedy in my past, my own past, from my school days, from time back at work. I had those 3 videos, and I've also reflected on my own experiences in many other videos, especially when I sometimes digress and go on a bit of a tangent. And I know I've got a really bad habit of doing that, and that's probably one of the many things I need to work on personally. But okay, I thought, I see if I can mix it up a bit, make it a bit fun, maybe even make it a bit more funny as well. And I remember when starting this channel, I said to one of my good mates, called Richard. I said to him, Richard, would you think any less of me if I made a YouTube channel about my thoughts? Because like you've said, a lot of stuff comes out of my mouth, and a lot of it, maybe not all of it, but a lot of it is good stuff. So it's like, would you think any less of me if I made a YouTube channel, with all my thoughts and my own opinions on things, and just how I recall things and facts and stories and what have you? And he said, Hirsch, I couldn't possibly think any less of you than I do already. I'm like, oh, sweet, so I can make the channel no harm done. So I made the channel, But okay, but without further ado, okay, Jesus, coming back to this, bit of a personal story, my first one night stand, a bit of a personal story, an interesting story, even a tad funny as well. But I really don't mind putting it here, and hopefully, I'm not sure if it really fits in with the channel, so to speak, or the sort of the general character of the channel. Even though some of the videos are very different from each other, I'm still not sure if this really fits in. If you think it's an odd one out, I do apologize for that. But at the very least, there's something a bit different and something which is pretty much all me, you could say. Even though those videos with comedy from my past were pretty much all me as well, or things that at least happened to me. Nothing formal, nothing that I researched, or read anywhere. Okay, first one night stand. I do remember this. Oh my god, this is in the city I grew up in, which is Wellington, the capital city of New Zealand. And this was a while back. Yes, I was 20, driving my first car, a cruddy old Holden Calais, 1989. That might sound ancient now, but the time, this was in the mid 2000s. So hopefully not, well, still pretty old then. The car was still about 16, 17 years old at the time. But, hey, not a bad first car, a cruddy old Holden Calais. And it was also our family car. We had it in our family since brand new, since 1989. I do remember that. So it was kind of like passed down. My dad had it, then mum had it, then my older brother had it, and then I had it. And it's got a lot of good memories. I did my first road trip in that car, for example, with 3 friends when we drove from Wellington to Taupo and back, one time. Okay, but coming back to the story, so yes, aged about 20, and despite being 20, I had not had a lot of experience in going clubbing here in New Zealand. You can go to nightclubs, when you turn 18, just like you can buy alcohol and smoke and work any job, things like that. So I remember going to a nightclub. It was actually on my own, and I went to a club because it was the first time to that particular club. I do remember in Wellington's Cuba Street, and that particular club, unfortunately, is no longer there. Of course, this was in the mid 2000s. This is a good 20 years ago, more, actually, in fact, more than 20 years ago. And so, I went to that club and I was just sort of there, just sort of standing around and a bit sort of nervous because of the activities that occurred in that club was strictly for, adults, if you know what I mean. And you could watch and all that. Of course, you couldn't take pictures or anything, but you could watch and you could only participate if you had the other person's permission. If you kind of know where I'm getting at, it was a bit of a different sort of club that I was just trying out, and my first time there as well. And so I was just sort of, there, and I still remember just in the sort of, blue party shirt and jeans as well, and, just sort of standing around and just trying to sort of absorb the atmosphere. And I just saw this beautiful young girl walk in and to the club, and she just walked in and she just sort of looked around, and then she just immediately sat down on just one single chair, which was just sort of out in the open, with a curtain behind her. And she just sat down and she was just on her phone. And geez, I remember texting, especially back in those days when you would text and you only had the basic phone keypad. And texting took a lot of time. And that's what all those abbreviations, the three little abbreviations like lol and to be honest and be right back. That's where all those sort of things originated from, which people still use today, even though they've got a full keyboard and they've got a much more sophisticated phone than we had back then, 20 or so years ago, more than 20 years ago. But this girl, I just, being as, I guess, naive and as socially inexperienced as I was, being only 20 years old at the time, I just, I just couldn't get over her. She was just stunning, stunning in a very sort of young and innocent way. And I was 20. I came to learn that she was 18, and I don't even know how. I probably shouldn't have, but I just walked over to her and said hello and just made a fool of myself, completely missing everything, just getting everything wrong, stuttering. I was like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to say this. Like, no, but yeah, but what I've heard, and it's like, but no, I just see you, and it's like you're like, whoa, whoa. I was like, oh my god, you're stunning. I just can't get over you. I just had to go up to you and just yeah, it didn't even make sense, and I could just see that she wasn't really interested, and she was like, "Look, if I give you my number, will you go away and stop talking to me?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll take that. Hey, I'll take anything." I was kind of desperate at the time, so she gave me her number, and she said that she had walked into the wrong club, and she was a bit, pissed off about it as well because she had to pay $20 to get into that particular club, as I described earlier. So she was and she told me her name. I'll never forget her name. Jordana was her name. I won't say the last name to protect her identity. My understanding is that she now lives in Australia, but her name was Jordana. I'll never forget her. And basically, she gave me her number, and she's like, "Sorry, I've actually come into the wrong club. I came to meet some friends, but I've come into the wrong club. I think they're the club next door, or perhaps a few doors down, and I'm going to go meet them. But hey, you can text me if you want." And I was like, "Hey, well, I'd love to take you out for a How about take you out for? I'd love to just take to go to. Could I take you out for a coffee sometime?" I was like, "Could I take you? Yeah, could I take you out for a coffee sometime?" Basically asking her out, and she's like, "Okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, okay, whatever." And she walks out, and I'm like, because I probably thought I'd achieved something, even though I really just made an absolute fool of myself. Being young and naive and socially inexperienced as I was then at the age of 20. Even for the age of 20, I think I was pretty bad, But I stayed at that club and I saw a lot of interesting things. Remember, I described it earlier, the sort of thing that happened at that club. I saw a lot of interesting things while I didn't participate. I just watched a lot of interesting things. And I remember actually texting Jordana throughout the night, and she actually responded. And I think I guess I was better on texting than talking. I think that's probably definitely one thing about me. I'm definitely better at typing than talking, and I was talking to Jordan saying, "Man, this is a very interesting club. You should see there's stuff that's going on here. Even if you're not into it, just to watch it is very interesting." Anyway, how are you going with your friends? And she was like, "Well, no, it's kind of boring. Met up with some friends, but kind of boring." We talked more and more, and she's like, "You seem quite nice." I was like, "Oh, thank you." And she was actually telling me that, she told her friends that, I met this really interesting, kind of nice guy. And she was saying that her friends like, oh, we should go back to the club and go talk to him. If you think he's interesting and if you think he's nice, go talk to him. And she was like, and she was saying, I don't know. She was actually telling me this, and then she was like, maybe a bit later on. I was like, okay, yes, maybe later on I might have a bit of a chance with her, And then she stopped talking to me for a bit, and I stayed at that club and saw a few more interesting things happen. And then eventually I was like, oof, call it a night. Yes, I remember I parked my car. I hate when you forget where you park your car, right? And I remember I parked my car, that old cruddy Holden, and I went back to the car, and of course was driving home. And I still remember, sort of on halfway home, suddenly I get a text back from Jordana. This is like late at night. This is probably closer to midnight. And Jordana is, hey, so sorry for not coming back to you. I actually did want to spend some time with you tonight. I hope it's not too late. Do you want to come over to my place? I'm in Connaught Street. I still remember Connaught Street in Brooklyn. And I still remember not the exact address, but kind of where she was and sort of up these stairs. And it's like a side door going into a room, and she had her own basically entrance. She was flatting with a few other girls. And I actually remember thinking, because a few months before that, I'd broken up with a particular girl, and she also lived in Brooklyn. And I remember thinking, oh my God, just please, let's just hope Jordana's not flatting with her. They're not flatting in the same house together. But that never eventuated, so thank God. But Jordan was like, "Do you want to come over to my place? We can continue talking. I want to talk to you further. You seem like an interesting guy." And I was like, at 20, like slamming down the brakes. I probably shouldn't have, just immediately turning the car around and a horrible U-turn right there on on a suburban street, and going to her place, getting out the map. This is before GPS, of course. Getting out the map. Okay, Connaught Street. Yes, I know that. Oh, yes, I know where Connaught Street is. Off the street, off that street, off the main Brooklyn Road, going up the hill. So I made it to her place, and it's just me. I've got my wallet, my phone, my keys, and the clothes on my back. And I find Jordana, and she seems quite relaxed and all that. And she had a pretty small room and a single bed and all that. Had a fireplace, I still remember, and she had a lot of art and stuff. And we just talked, and we got on really well together. And she even smoked. I still remember her smoking a cigarette and leaving the door open. I remember feeling really cold because I was just in a shirt and jeans. And but eventually she stopped. She finished the cigarette and closed the door. I was like, oh, thank God. Didn't tell her that, but I felt pretty cold. And we got on really well together. And it just, nature just took its course. And I remember it was after midnight, and Jordan's like, you want to really drive home now? I'm like, it's not that far. I guess I can drive home. She's like, I don't know. Just if you want, you can crash here tonight. I was like, really? It's like, yeah, you can crash here tonight. And it's like, oh, but I don't have anything, just don't have anything. I just didn't bring any supplies or any sleeping clothes or anything like that. And she's like, oh, it's fine. And one thing leads to another. She takes off her clothes and goes into bed, and kind of invites me into it. So I do the same thing, and it's just a single bed she had. And so we're kind of together, and one thing led to another, and that was it. First one night stand, I didn't even see it coming, but that was it back then when I was 20, with Jordana in her room in Brooklyn of Wellington. And yeah, one thing leads to another, and it goes pretty well. And just in the middle, I stop. I'm like, so I take her, we're still on for that coffee. And she just stops, and she just bursts out laughing. She just, in the middle of the love making, I just do that, she's like, yes, we're definitely still on for that coffee, don't worry about that. And yep, that was it. Pretty natural. Didn't even see it coming. Didn't expect that would happen that night. One thing led to another, and that was it. And yep, stayed with her that night, and woke up in the morning. She had to get going to a place early in the morning. I dropped her, went very well, and went home. Of course, a really, really happy person, even though I was still in the same clothes, hadn't brushed my teeth or anything, but went home a very, very happy person, as you can imagine. And yep, that is the basic story of my first one night stand. So a bit of a different video, especially for this channel. But hey, I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it interesting. If not, I apologize. Hey, hopefully one of my other videos will make up for it. And yep, otherwise, hey, take care, all the best. And it's Friday, so have a great weekend. Thank you.